Hello folks, I hope that you're having just an absolute great day today. Today I'm going to take a look at Charles Saunders' first major story collection. It's Imaro, which is set in a fictional Africa that he has created that has some of the typical African nations, African cultures, but also some traditional African creatures, African fantasy elements to it, and that sort of thing. And I dropped it on the floor, so I'm going to bend down and pick it up for a moment. But while I do, I'm going to still talk. I've already reviewed a story by Charles Saunders for you, and that story was Gimli's Songs, which is a soul and sorcery, rather sword and soul story rather than a sword and sorcery style story, which was told in the Dark Matter collection that I've been reading. And I mentioned that this was my favorite story in this collection, and also my favorite author. And I talked a little bit about why. I just want to remind you, Charles Saunders was an up and coming guy. He's a black writer. He was this up and coming voice for speculative fiction in the 70s. And he was publishing a number of short stories and a novella here and there in magazines. And then he got his break in '76 when he was in this Best of Fantasy collection by Lynn Carter. Lynn Carter was reading his stuff. He had built up his cachet and so forth, and it published him in a Best Science Fiction catalog of best fantasy stories in the mid '60s. And that was in '76. We got published in '77. So he got published there, got his name out, got his recognition out. That was his big break. Then he signs a contract, and that contract is for this book. And this book is basically Imaro. And Imaro is a story, a book that is a collection of a number of stories starring the character of Imaro. There's 6 of them in here. It's 180 pages long. I thought about doing these stories individually, but since it was self-published both the first time and now, I figured I'd just do it as one book for you, and then we'll move on. There are other things in the Imaro series too. There's The Quest for Kush, which was published later. Here is the continent that it's set on, Niobani, which is Swahili for home. He wanted this to be seen as sort of a home place for people to go to. And he does have a number of stories that are set here. His world building feels like a sort of modern take on Conan the Barbarian by Robert E. Howard. Sword and Sorcery, which means it's got lots of sword, less sorcery. Its fantastic elements are much less so, but it's got good characters, character development, world building is amazing and incredible, and you have a lot of these great things that are happening therein. He's more than just a black Conan. He is. It has a modern storytelling and approach to storytelling. The first publication of the first collection, however, was delayed for legal issues because they were sued by the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate. That delayed the production of the collection, even though it was ready to go, which pushed him past his hot meter into years later when it was finally published, after the marketing had already happened, after the things had already happened, and so forth. So it wasn't nearly as successful as it could have been. It did create a sort of subgenre of sword and sorcery that's been referred to by fans as sword and soul, which is basically a sort of African-inspired, African sort of a location in the sword and sorcery world that features black people and black protagonists and black antagonists and that sort of a thing, and which other authors have followed since then. So he has had an influence with that sort of style of world telling. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed every single page I've read by this guy. I just love it. It's really strongly well done. And again, his song, which was in this style from the Dark Matter collection, Gimli Songs, was my favorite story in this entire collection of like 30 stories. He is a lost treasure, and I'm happy to give him some more light. Check out Imaro. I'll link you to it in the collections below. Have you heard of Imaro? Have you read it? If not, I could not recommend it to you higher. It's a 10 out of 10. It's so well done. It's so well written. It's so well crafted as a story. If you enjoy sword and sorcery, you're going to love it. If you enjoy fantasy, you're going to love it. If you enjoy different types of settings for your things, then you're going to enjoy it because of the sort of deep, rich African setting with its primal nature in this sort of a magical Africa. It's really well done. So again, I could not recommend it more. It's definitely my favorite guy who I encountered from that collection. So there you are. That's Charles Saunders. That's the Imaro collection, and I'll go ahead and I'll leave you there. What do you think of my review? Did you agree or disagree with anything? Please feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you want to talk about some of the stories in it specifically, I'm happy to sort of engage you on a story-by-story basis. Finally, I just want to thank you for a moment for taking some time out of your day and watching my video. We all have so many things happening in our lives. So the fact that you spent this time with me, it's so humbling, and I really do appreciate it. So thanks again and have a great day.